Hello class. For my demo topic this week, I will be talking about everything that goes into a shortboard, from all its little details to how hydrodynamic it is. And first thing I wanted to talk about was the length of the board. And this is my normal shortboard, and it's 5'10", and it's mostly meant for waves from like the 3-foot range to 10 feet. It's probably where it would max out. And the length is super important because it helps determine the size and type of waves you're gonna surf. So this board is mostly meant for like barreling or like running point breaks that are like super steep and very critical. Compared to a longboard where they're more like, I think, in the 9 to 11 foot range in terms of height. And the type of waves would probably be like from 3 feet down. And it's a lot mushier and like softer waves. Then another thing I wanted to talk about on the boards were its thickness. And the thickness is very important because it helps determine the volume or like buoyancy of the board. So for example, this board is 31 liters, and that is calculated by the amount of water that it displaces when it's pushed down under the water. And the more liters and you can think of is like it's easier to paddle and get into waves, but it's like harder to turn and harder to do maneuvers. Well, when you have less liters, it's easier to turn and like more maneuverable, but it's also harder to get into waves. Another thing I was going to talk about is the outline of the board and like the width. They kind of go hand in hand, and that will help determine how well or the type of like waves you're going to be surfing to. So a more like thick and wide board is going to be more like a cruiser, and like you're not going to be doing a bunch of turns. You're just going to like just cruise with the wave and go with the flow. While this shortboard is going to be more high performance and like doing more like carves and snaps and more maneuvers. Another thing that's important in boards, especially shortboards, is that hard edge right there. I don't know how well you can see it, but it's very sharp. And this will help help the rail like dig into the water and helps hold the board and like keep it steady. Without that, the board would be slipping everywhere and it would not be fun. Then another aspect of boards I was going to talk about is a concave. I don't know how well you can see it on this board because there's not a lot, but concave is how like the belly of the board is shaped. So mine has like a V where it's like 2 little crevices, and that helps like more water get through and the board's faster, but it's not as stable. Some other boards have like a bowl where it's just like a U a little bit, and that actually helps the board hold in the water, but they're not as fast. Then another aspect of the boards I wanted to talk about was the fins, which are very important. And fins are like really important for the board because it determines how it's going to ride. Like sometimes the board will feel horrible, but it's just because of the fins. So these fins are called keels, and they hang off the edge of the fin box. You can kind of see right there, which means they're kind of placed further back than normal fins, which will be more upright and not go past that little end part right there. And these are mostly for twin fins or like fishes, and they're really good because they hold and are super fast, but you can still maneuver them because you don't have a third fin. And one final aspect of the boards I was going to talk about is the tail. So on this board, it's a rounded pin, and this board's really good for maneuvers like turning, and it's also good for barrels because it holds really well. Some other boards will have a squash tail where the tail comes out more instead of going rounded. And those are more common in high performance shortboards, and it's really good for maneuvers and like doing airs and turning. And there's one more like tail shape that I'll talk about, which is a fish tail, where it's like, or a swallowtail, where it's like that. And those are more good because they help keep the tail wide without having it go too far out and affecting the length. And yeah, that's how a board works.